Hello everyone, welcome back to another 2v2 Warhammer battle. I am bringing the Beastmen, and we have allied with the Vampire Counts versus the Empire and the Dwarves here. For my army, I brought kind of Minotaur heavy strong. We have the two Gorbals, they're back from vacation. Also got a normal Minotaur with shield, and then two Minotaurs with great weapons. My main line is going to be 4 Gore herds, and then we also have 2 Ungore Spearman herds. I have the Brace Shaman of Beast, which is Flock of Doom, and then Morgor the Shadow Gave with all of his unique stuff as well. Pretty simple, just bashy army. For my Vampire Counter player, we have a bunch of zombies. Behind them we have a bunch of Grave Guard. Then we have the Corpse Card of the Unholy Lodestone variety. 2 White Kings? No, just 1 White King being led by Vlad von Karstein, and then we also have a Vampire of Shadows with Pendulum Spell, the Withering, and Pit of Shades. Pit of Shadows, I believe. That's going to be my allies' army. For the enemy, they're doing something here. We have a front line of nothing but Dwarf Warriors, then we have 3 Hammers being led by a Rune Lord on top of his chariot, 2 Thunderers, and then the Empire player brought Porous Topbringer on the flying mount. We have 3 Steam Tanks, a Luminarch of Hish, the Templehof variety, and then we have a Jade Wizard with the healing spells, and then the armor spell, which is that fist one. I forget what it's called. I don't really use it that often. Flesh to Stone. There we go. Plus 60 armor. A lot of armor. And that is going to be the entirety of... Oh, wait. My Vampire Count also has 2 Blood Knights, I think. There are Black Knight and a Blood Knight. Now, on this battle, the number count is a little lower than what I usually play on, but I mean, that just kind of happens, but we're still going to play it. So I could not resist, even though the Dwarves have a really high magic resistance, I am hitting so many units with Flock of Doom right here. So I figure, and plus, there is no Imperial Infantry to hit Flock of Doom on, so I'm just going to hit these guys. Meanwhile, these Steam Tanks and the Templehof Luminarch are going to be trying to finish off this Corpse Cart before they even get into the battle. The Thunderer is going to try to be firing on Vlad von Karstein. Meanwhile, I'm just getting into a flanking position over here. My allies, Cav, is also going to be getting into a flanking position. As the enemy Empire player artillery just focuses on the Vampire Count. You can see they've almost destroyed the Corpse Cart, but not quite yet. Vlad von Karstein still okay. Those zombies are taking some damage, but that's what they're there for. Now you can see the Dwarf player is trying and shore up their right flank here, as I hit them with another Flock of Doom, trying to grab these hammers in this time. Hitting just a ton of units. Just a ton. I'm going to just run these Gorbals ahead along with the Minotaurs. Of course, going to come down here. Now, my Minotaurs are a little squishier, it's going to appear, because their hit points are lower because of the lower unit counts in this battle. But still, we're going to try and pin Porous Topbringer here with their 3 Siege Tanks. We're going to try and wrap our Gore Herds around and start dealing some damage to these Dwarf Warriors. Get some bodies in here along with Morgor the Shadow Gave. Trying to all bring down Porous Topbringer, who is being healed and has all sorts of buffs. I'm going to pop Apocalyptic Visions here, so our unit's going to get a plus 34 melee attack and leadership to try and focus them down quickly. My Vampire Count ally is going to just be duking it out with the Dwarf Warriors and the Rune Lord, sorry. And you can see the Templehof Luminarch. I think it actually got a charge in there very briefly. I think it's their Cav is going to... Where's their Cav? Where's their Cav? Oh, there they are. They're right over there. Not engaged quite yet. We almost killed Porous Topbringer, but I think he gets another heal spell. He also has Flesh to Stone, so he has a ton of armor. Here goes the Pendulum Spell on these 2 hammers, which is really good. And so now we're going to focus our Minotaurs on the 3 Steam Tanks that are still nearby, or 2 Steam Tanks. Where's the third one at? Did you already kill it? Maybe you already killed it. No, it's right there. It's right there. Now, Gore Herds are not necessarily great against Dwarf Warriors, but I am backing them up with Minotaurs to try and weaken the Dwarf line, as Porous Topbringer is going to come back for another charge to try and finish off our Gorbals. So I'm going to get our 2 Gorbals back on the Porous Topbringer. As you can see, it's almost finished off one of these Steam Tanks. Some of my units are routing due to Fear and Terror because of the Steam Tanks. That's what they do. They are Fear and Terror along with Porous Topbringer. Who's now fighting my Gore Herds. Now we're going to run both of our Gorbals in there, just do massive amount of damage. Again, it looks like it's doing more because Boris' hit points are lower than usual due to the low unit count. Meanwhile, the Knights are back here dealing with some Hammerers. They're not really necessarily going to win that fight against 2 Hammerers, but they're trying. As my Minotaur herd over here is dealing with these few Dwarf Warriors helping the Gore Herds. And now they're going to be sticking them on the Templehof Luminarch to try and bring it down before it can snipe any other good targets. I believe Vlad is still alive. Yeah, Vlad is still alive, barely hanging out over here. I believe he's going to take a couple shots. And the White King maybe? The other vampire's there. The White King may be dead, though. You can see the Nice Mech here having a hard time with the hammers, but we are now dealing with the Temple of Luminarch on the 2 Gorbals. The other Minotaurs over here dealing with some more steam tanks. And now the 2 Gorbals are going to turn back on this steam tank that was chasing them. And I'm going to try and once again kill Boris Topbringer, throwing more Gore. The Shadow Cave, I've summoned at this point 2, I think, Chaos Spawn, or about to summon 2 Chaos Spawn. I believe I may summon a Chaos Spawn from these dead Dwarf Warriors here soon. Yeah, we have 1 Chaos Spawn taking care of these Dwarf Warriors up here as we are trying to focus down Boris Topbringer again. But he is going to get hit with, I'm not even entirely sure he gets hit with actually, an Earth Blood, but that's not going to do shit for him because he's already at his max regeneration. But it will at least heal these steam tanks up though, which I think is dumb. I really think they should change the lore of life so it cannot heal steam tanks because that's just stupid. Just so dumb. Meanwhile, my Vampire Count ally is just holding on. This is just an attrition battle. We have a bunch of tanky dwarves fighting a bunch of fighting to the death zombies and Graveguard with the assistance of vampires. Vlad is barely hanging on to life. We are now focusing our attention onto this Rune Lord and the other steam tank. You see these 2 Gorbals took down the second steam tank. They only have 1 left. Luminarch and Fish is gone. These hammers are being dealt with my 2 summoned Chaos Spawns. So they're just in here taking care of those 2 hammers. And these units are basically free. They're just summon units. That's like my 4th or 5th Flock of Doom on a lot of Dwarf Warriors. And now I throw in a couple Minotaur groups in here to try and break their lines, which they do. And now we're just going to try and rout them, chasing this steam tank with the 2 Gorbals. More Gorge just taking it out with the Rune Lord along with some Boar Herds. And here comes some more reinforcements that are back from routing. And it's kind of looking like we're probably going to win this fight at this point. Also, the Withering didn't help the Dwarves at all either. So good cast for my ally there. And then that is going to be a victory. So good game to both armies. Our enemy army, they had a plan. The plan was to hold off everything with a bunch of Dwarf Warriors and then support them with a bunch of steam tanks and a Temple of Luminarch. The problem is, like, this could have maybe worked. All those tanky Dwarf Warriors could easily hold off my Gore Herds. The only units that were really threatening them was the Gorbals and the Minotaurs, and I guess more with the Shadow Gate too. But like, my army is kind of neutralized for the most part by a bunch of Dwarf Warriors and Hammers. The thing is though, they allowed me to flank them. They allowed my Minotaurs and my Gorbals to get into the steam tanks without really support of the Dwarf Warriors, which is really what they needed. So without those Dwarf Warriors, I was able to surround and destroy the steam tanks. Now, I mean, at first glance, this may look like a silly army, but I believe if they had incorporated their armies a little bit more and these steam tanks were protected, because you can see the amount of kills they got, and they weren't even really supported that much. Same thing with the Temple of Luminarch. A ton of Dwarf Warriors, high leadership, high tanky units, and with the steam tanks behind them or just intermixed along the lines and, you know, sniping units and the Temple of Luminarch being safe, but they just didn't protect their flank from my entire army, and I think that's partly what did them in there, was us able to snipe their steam tanks. So again, may look like a silly army, but I believe it could work. I honestly do believe this relatively simple army could definitely work. I think. But anyway, for Breeze here, we got a decent amount of kills with Vlad and the Vampire Count, or the Vampire Shadow person. White King did die with zero kill. Wow. Maybe they got sniped early on by the Luminarch and the steam tanks. I must have missed that. The zombies did what they do, Graveguard. You can see they got a decent amount of kills, but again, the Dwarf Warriors are very tanky dwarves. And the Blood Knights and the Black Knights had 0 chance at winning a battle against 2 Hammerer groups, or maybe there was even all 3 over there. But they tried, and then the Corpse Guard got sniped out early. So again, like with that Temple of Luminarch, sniping out key targets like this, Vlad von Karstein, if it could have got a couple shots off on my Gorbals, like that would have been just devastating. So they had the potential to win this, I really do believe. For my army here, again, against Dwarf Warriors, my Gores don't really do that much. I was expecting to fight these guys against the Empire Infantry, which they do pretty well against. But luckily enough, I did bring a lot of Minotaurs, so we had a lot of armor piercing with the Gorbals and them, and they just carried my part of the battle. And then for the Dwarves, they just did a great job of tanking throughout the entire time. Now, another just real quick, I guess you can call it criticism or advice. You really would want to spread, like especially after the first Flock of Doom was cast, your immediate reaction after that should be to spread your troops in a very long line. Or if you don't want them to be in a super long line, then just do rows and rows. So like have 4 Dwarf Warriors in a long line. Behind them have another 4 Dwarf Warriors, you know? Space them out. Dwarves do have a natural magic resistance of, what, 25%? But still, when so many units are getting hit by like 5 Flock of Dooms, that does add up over time even against Dwarves. So that would be just another suggestion I would say. Just don't bunch them up that much when you have AoE spells like that being cast by your enemies. But again, good game to both teams here for Breeze, Britash, and then Gur. We'll call him Gur. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let's go watch a cinematic view of the battle. Comes that beast in flame. But yeah, like that should not be happening. You really need to spread out your units. But at least they're dwarves, so they don't take as much damage from that. Look at them just sending the Gorbals flying. So there's that White King sitting at full health. It must get sniped by the Luminar, because that's 0 kills. Maybe not. Maybe it just gets killed by dwarf warriors? Really? And the Rune Lord? Huh. I guess, yeah, try to take out the Rune Lord and it's gonna die. Damn. You dove the wrong way there, Gorbal. You dove the wrong way. Those steam tanks definitely are sending bulls flying everywhere. Chaos spawn fun. we go. Again, hope you enjoyed the battle, everybody. I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day.